Welcome to the Business Greater Than You podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of men and women who have successfully transcended the frazzled solopreneur life and built productive teams with better lifestyle and income.
I'm Nelson Bars, the founder and owner of Utah Independent Mortgage Corp.
And I'm Liz Sears, founder and co-owner of My Utah Agents.
We're excited for you to listen, interact, and grow with us. So please share your comments below and let's get started.
Okay, here we go. Book number 2, Essentialism. I'm excited to talk about this book. It's one that we picked up as a brokerage and actually did a book club on it as the whole team.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one I had not read. You recommended it for the podcast, so I've been reading it, and it's exactly what I need. I mean, it's very, very poignant to me because this is an area of my life that I struggle in. This book, this is like, if you're a people pleaser, if you have a hard time protecting your own priorities, this is going to be really helpful for you.
Yep.
Right?
And, you know, another thing that has been very helpful for me on this one as well is that when I'm in a meeting or I'm reading a book or I'm doing all these things, I have lots and lots and lots of ideas pop in my head. And I got in the habit of just jotting them down as tasks that I could do. And I never really scrubbed the list. I just let it grow to be gigantic.
Doing all of them?
I don't know. I just didn't want to forget them because if I forgot them, then my subconscious would be like, wait, you had that good idea. And I just felt heavy in my brain. And so getting to the point where I can go through and say the ROI isn't there. And for sometimes the return on investment, you know, I've been investing how many minutes on a regular basis to move the task out, you know, so getting to a point where I just delete it.
So how would you define essentialism? He spends a lot of time at the beginning of the book telling us what an essentialist is compared to a non-essentialist. How would you put it in your own words?
So if I had to put it in my own words, essentialism would be focusing on the things that create the life you want and eliminating all the stuff that doesn't. And it's amazing how much stuff doesn't, but we feel obligated to those other things for myriad reasons. You know, either someone asked us to, or for me, it's an idea that popped in my head.
It's your idea, so it must be great.
It must be great.
done.
Well,
right?
I mean, you know, that's a pretty good, you know.
Pretty good test.
Pretty good test. So sometimes it's because it aligns with what people expect you to do. Like we feel we're expected to have that piece, or, you know, whatever the reason. So this whole book is just about really getting clear on what is important and what's not. And most everything's not.
Yeah. It's a very visual book. He has a lot of sketches and drawings and charts, and I think it's really cool. I enjoy seeing visually what he's trying to represent in words.
Yep.
I like this definition. He says, the way of the essentialist is the relentless pursuit of less but better.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean occasionally giving a nod to the principle. It means pursuing it in a disciplined way.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, on the next page, he gives just a couple examples of the difference between a non-essentialist and an essentialist on page 8. So thinks, does, and gets. So a non-essentialist thinks all things to all people. An essentialist thinks less but better. A non-essentialist does the undisciplined pursuit of more. The essentialist does the disciplined pursuit of less. So undisciplined versus disciplined. And then the non-essentialist lives a life that does not satisfy, and an essentialist lives a life that really matters.
Yeah.
So, all right.
That's awesome. I feel like I'm in the left-hand column, the non-essentialist.
I know a lot of times.
I got a lot to learn from this book. This is very good.
You know, I kind of compare it to when you start working out, like, because I've training for that half marathon and running. I am.
You did.
I'm in the middle of it
right now.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
So running, I've gotten up to where I can run 7 miles without stopping.
Nice.
I'm pretty proud of that. And then I went to ride a bike yesterday and I was so tired in like 15 minutes. I'm like, how? But it's just different muscles. It's a different discipline. And so I think a lot of times when we're learning certain disciplines in our business that we think, how can I be so good at that and so bad at this? And it's simply because it's a different discipline, and it's like an onion. There's just layers. So as you go, you'll learn it. All right, page 10. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will.
Yeah.
It's so true.
How many times have you heard that? Right? And this isn't the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to get it through your head. It's hard to, I think, like you said, there's a lot of social pressure to be, you know, the non-essentialist. It's just kind of normal. It's how everyone lives. It's nobody, not nobody, but I know very few people who really can say no and defend their own priorities and have that designed, driven life that they want, and not just what everyone around them is telling them to
And
do.
it's even fewer people who can do that gracefully and tactfully. You know, there's a common phrase that I always laugh every time I hear people say it. When you say, how's it going? Or how you doing? They say, good. Busy, but good.
Yeah.
Like, that's what everybody says. And so one of the things that I started doing a while ago is just to eliminate the words busy and overwhelm out of my vocabulary. I never refer to myself that way. Now I'm excited from reading this book to actually become not that way. Because even though I wasn't saying it and it helped me with the mindset of it, it wasn't necessarily helping me eliminate the non-essential.
I can see the vision of it. It sounds like a great life.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a myth in here. He talks about the idea that you can have it all. I think a lot of us just think we can do it all. We can do all of the ideas that pop into our head. We can do all of the tasks that we write down on our to-do list. Like,
if you want to be a lunatic, you can.
That's how a lot of times I live my life. Like, I'll do a to-do list that's a whole page long, and instead of like crossing a bunch off, I'll just dive in.
Yep.
And then by the end of the day, I'm done with like a quarter of it.
Right.
And then I'll transfer it all to another to-do list tomorrow, the same list again and again. I just carry that weight with me all day long, just assuming I have to do every single thing on the list.
Yeah. You know, at one point in time I did this, and now that I think of it, I was like, that was a good idea. Maybe I should do that again. Is I really do get a little stressed out if I throw away tasks. Like if I have thought of something and then I throw it away. So what I have done in the past is I've just gone through all of my lists and come up with what are the top things. And then I put this in my burn pile that I haven't yet burned.
Someday
then,
burn pile.
Yeah. And then if I really feel the need to go back and look at it, it's there, but I don't have to type things. So that way it helps my brain let go of it.
Okay. That's a cool idea.
So, you know, one of the things he mentions in here too is that if you don't scrub your list, that you end up with diffused efforts because you're splitting it amongst a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the closet analogy he gives because I freaking love that. Okay, it's on page 17 for everybody, is that when going through a closet, a lot of times people will use the criteria of whether or not to get rid of clothes by saying, do I think I'll wear this someday? But what if instead of that we ask the questions, do I love this? Do I look great in it? Do I wear it often? And so if we use that same type of criteria with all of the things we've been asked to do, instead of saying, do I think I'll do this task someday? We could say, do I love this? Am I good at it? And do I do it often? You know, is this something that benefits me or would it benefit me today?
Does it bring me joy?
Yes.
This reminds me of the Marie Kondo book.
I know. Con Marie.
Con Marie.
Yeah. If you open up I have so many drawers that it's all Con Marie. It's so nice. I even bought a dresser to put in my closet instead of where my hanging clothes is. Cause
that's funny. My wife has read this book. She read it long before I ever did, but for her, it had nothing, you know, she's not really into like business books or, it was literally about life for her and the house. And she's on this long kick of minimalism around the house and just decluttering every room and parts of her life too, right? She's given up some hobbies, and it's been fascinating to see how it's helped her. She's really focused. I admire that.
Yeah, I ended up getting rid of almost all the toys in my house once my kids started to get past that stage. And I just have one type of toy in each room. And so when the nieces and nephews come over, in the front room are the blocks. That's it.
Yeah.
So when they're done, like putting them away is easy.
Yeah,
and in my
smart.
kitchen drawer is where I have the melty snowman. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but that's like the hit for my kids. All right. So page 18, they talk about like once you've gone through everything you've eliminated off of your list, it says once you've figured out which activities and efforts to keep, the ones that make your highest level of contribution, you need a system to make executing your intentions as effortless as possible.
Absolutely.
It's like making a...
So what do they mean by a system? A system to make your executing effortless.
Yes.
So processes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so just figuring out what works best for you. The very end of the book is where it really talks about making it easy, doing the process.
I have this coach who's trying to help me lose weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she keeps talking about systems. And she's like, okay, you got to have the intention, but then you have to have the system. So the system is like, okay, you know, you move the alarm clock across the room,
Yep.
and your shoes are right next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pre-programmed system to help me accomplish the intention, right?
Because then you don't have to do the whole thing. You only have to stand up
Mhm.
and walk across the room to turn off your alarm
Yeah.
clock.
And then,
Then
the next
you just
step is
put on
right
your-
there. And the next step is right there.
Yep.
And it's like the least resistance. right?
Yeah. So figuring out which system works for the different parts of your life as you implement it.
So he says essentialism is about creating a system for handling the closet of our lives.
Yep.
It's not a process you undertake once a year, once a month, or even once a week. Like organizing your closet, it is a discipline you apply each and every time you're faced with a decision.
Yep.
Awesome.
I love that. All right.
Let's see. So I did mark here this chapter on essence, or this segment on essence,
Mm-hmm.
about there's 3 deeply entrenched assumptions that we have to conquer. One is I have to, the other is it's all important, and the other is I can do both. This is me raising my hand.
Oh my goodness,
I
me
can
too.
do both. I commit often to more than I could possibly do, right?
I think most people do. Part of like what you had said is that social pressure, that's what everybody does. If you don't do that, now you're different.
Yeah.
Might get kicked out of the tribe.
Which wouldn't be all bad.
Might not be. You know, like you had said, you know, I have to, it's all important. I can do both. And then I love how he goes on to say, like mythological sirens, these assumptions are as dangerous as they are seductive. They draw us in and down into the shallow waters. To embrace the essence of essentialism requires we replace them with these. That's what I liked about it. Only a few things really matter. I can do anything, but not everything. And then I choose to. So like the first one was, instead of I have to, it's I choose to. Instead of it's all important, only a few things are. And I can do anything, but not everything.
I can do anything, but not everything.
And you know what's funny is that when I remember those comments, it really, really helps me in the moment. So I might just have to go
I'm
like,
gonna put that on my affirmations.
that's what I was going to say.
I can do anything, but not everything.
but not everything.
I would say that to my
Perfect.
wife all the time. I can do anything, but not everything.
So on page 36, it says the ability to choose cannot be taken away or even given away. It can only be forgotten. So how do we forget our ability to choose?
This is where he talks about learned helplessness.
Yeah.
right? He talks about
Wasn't
dogs,
that fascinating?
Dogs that learn, like, nothing I do is going to stop the electric shock, so I'm not going to do anything. Right?
Yeah.
That is fascinating. Sometimes I wonder, though, like dog studies, animal studies, do they really equate to human studies, right?
Well, I think we can always find some sort of parallel. So the little note that I jotted down next to this was, beware if I hear myself say, I have to do blank. I have to pick up the kids. I have to do the dishes. I have to call that client back. I have to run the CMA. I have to put gas in the car.
So you're just watching out for that, trying not to say that.
Right. Because even if, because
have
truly
to.
I don't have to do any of those. I don't. There's consequences if I don't. So then I get to, I was about to say I have to decide. I get to decide which consequence do I want. Well, I'd like to have clean clothes, so yeah, I'm going to do the laundry.
Yeah.
I'd like to get to my next destination, so I'm choosing to put gas in the car.
Okay.
And so even just changing the mindset makes a difference. And sometimes I've realized how much stuff I can delegate. Oh my gosh, that's one of the coolest things as a business owner. Like I even had an assistant take my car to go get its oil changed for me.
Wow.
I got to work. I'm like, will you go
Living the
take my car?
life.
Bring your laptop. You're going to be working while you're waiting.
Yeah. Well, on the next page, he does say there's evidence that humans learn helplessness in much the same way. Gives the example of like a kid who struggles in math early on, and they just assume for the rest of their life that they're bad at math.
Right.
And he says these people don't believe they have a choice in what opportunity, assignment, or challenge to take on. They believe they have to do it all.
You know, this kind of goes a little bit into that whole mindset book by Carol Dweck, where sometimes we can even help children help ourselves, things like that, instead of rewarding or complimenting or putting down, you know, the result of not being good at math. Instead, compliment the effort. Wow, you really stuck at that. You really tried hard. And, you know, I can't believe your tenacity to figure it out, type things like that. I've changed a lot of my own inner dialogue as I've worked on projects. Because, you know, it's not uncommon for people to say really mean things to themselves.
Absolutely. We're mean to ourselves, right? He introduces the Pareto principle here in the book, the 80-20 rule. I know that you talk a lot about that. Something that's really been important to me too. Can you tell us a little bit about that or summarize what he's saying?
Sure. Which page are you on?
43 and 44. At the bottom of 44, he says the idea introduced way back in the 1790s by Vilfredo Pareto.
So the 80-20 rule, and I just realized I mentioned it in the last book and didn't even talk about it, but I think most business people have at least been introduced to it a little bit. So basically, the 80-20 rule just says that 80% of our results come from 20% of our efforts, and only 20% of our results come from 80% of our efforts. And so, and it was originally found to be the crops, that 80% of the land produced only 20% of the crops. And then they found out, and vice versa, 20% of the people paid 80% of the taxes, blah, blah, blah. So in our business, 20% of what we do generates 80% of our results, and getting super clear on that. And so, in fact, one of the things I barely challenged one of my agents to do is we identified, obviously in real estate, 20% is the prospecting, you know, going and finding clients. And so I told her, I said, you know, and it even goes down one more step. So we've really been identifying what is her 20% for the week. I said, now what I want you to do is figure out the 20% of the 20%. Right. In order to double your production, you don't have to double all of the 20%. You don't have to do twice as much prospecting. You need to figure out which one you're just really good at, which one is your talent, your effort, and then double that piece. That alone will get you so many more results.
Something I've learned about this 80-20 principle, I've read some of these books by Richard Koch. He mentions this author, and he's written a lot about it. And, you know, he talks about how it's just a natural law. It's a natural phenomenon. It happens in everywhere. You can't find a place where it doesn't apply, right? Even like the branches of a leaf and how the stems grow in that pattern of this 80-20 pattern. And it just goes.
I didn't know that. Now I want to look that up.
I know. And then the reason why I brought it, I think a lot of times we spend a lot of our time trying to fight this instead of going with it, right? Instead of saying, okay, this 80-20 is the real thing, I'm going to go with the 20%. We try to level the playing field. It's like, okay, well, I'm lagging on these other areas, so I'm going to spend all my time and energy over here. Right. He even talks about like wealth and, you know, how there's a wealth inequality in the world, and it's the 80-20 rule happening. And I think a lot of energy is spent trying to break a natural thing, right? A lot of political and just strife over like the 80-20. And I don't know how anyone's ever been successful at eliminating the inequality that exists with wealth, right? So in your business, instead of fighting the 80-20 principle, just accept it and look for it. And like you said, dive deeper. Inside that 20%, there's another 80-20. And inside there's another, So it's a great principle.
And I love the final quote in this where it says, John Maxwell said, you cannot overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. You know, probably one of the best examples of this is every single one of us has been in a moment in our life where something occurred that all of a sudden we had to put all of our focus towards, you know, whether it was an accident, whether it was a death, whether it was a, you know, something, opportunity, whatever it is. And suddenly, boom, our schedule's clear. And we can totally take advantage or take care of what's happening right then.
Spend your time on the emergency, and there are a few things that you get done in between. And those are the most important things.
And so all of us have experienced needing to clear off our plate. And so when we can take that approach more often and choose to do it, not be forced to do it, I think it will make a big impact.
I had an interesting experience with that. My uncle passed away. I had to, on an emergency, fly out to Maryland and spend 2 weeks with his kids, right?
I remember that.
And it was it was not, I mean, I have a great team and they were able to keep the business going, and I spent a couple days working from the hotel. But what really changed when I got back and I realized I don't want to die at age 60, right? I've got to take better care of myself. And I don't want to wait till I'm 60 to enjoy my life.
Right.
I just told my team, I was like, okay, just pretend like I just got diagnosed with some kind of crazy disease and I can't work till noon.
Yeah.
I'm just not coming in till noon for a while. And I think I went probably 6 weeks
Really?
of just coming in at noon every day and working on my own priorities in the mornings. And it's, you know, like, I just realized I was wasting a lot of time between 9 and noon every morning. Just meetings, emails, whatever, the non-essential, right? I could probably cut it down to 2 hours a day and still accomplish everything I'm accomplishing now.
Isn't that interesting? That's
insane.
Parkinson's law.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know Parkinson's law, it's that a task will expand to fill the time allotted. So if you give yourself 8 hours a day to get your job done, it takes 8 hours. But if you give yourself 4, it takes 4.
Whoever decided we're supposed to work 8 hours a day anyway?
Some lunatic.
Some union person somewhere. Like,
and the people working more than 8 hours are
when
like,
they had to
I wish
divide
I
a
could.
24-hour shift into 3 so that they could keep the factory running all day, every day.
I think that is what it is.
Doesn't really apply, does it?
No. So I don't know what page this is, 46 and 7, where it says a non-essentialist thinks almost everything is essential. An essentialist thinks almost everything is non-essential. Seems like a play on words, but it's so incredibly true.
I love that. I should hang that up somewhere. Seriously, I need to do all this. I need to read this book like 10 times.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I this is one of the books that I read 2 times in a row.
Did you?
Yeah, and this is my 3rd time through it. It's amazing how much more you learn if you read it the second you finish reading it, because it just kind of anchors it.
So he's talking about trade-offs here in this section of the book, right? I'm on page 55. He says we can avoid the reality of trade-offs, but we can't escape them.
Yes.
Right? And I just marked here where he says, as painful as they can sometimes be, trade-offs represent a significant opportunity. By forcing us to weigh both options and strategically select the best one, we significantly increase our chance of achieving the outcome we want. I think a lot of times I'm missing opportunities by not recognizing a trade-off.
Yes.
Instead of saying this or this, it's this now, this later, right? And there's the opportunity missed to pick the best one and to dive in and to discard the other one completely.
Right. And there's a weight that stays on us when we keep so much stuff on our plate. And like I said, you know, the diluted or efforts that you have.
Yeah.
On 57, I had written a note where the non-essentialist says, I can do both, or how can I do it all? And the essentialist asks, what's the trade-off to make? How can I go big on the one that matters? And so I just made a note to myself that I still haven't eliminated some of the options. I've chosen which one I want to do first, but I haven't eliminated the other ones, and I've just simply pushed them out. So it causes me to have to keep dealing with them because those options keep showing up. So
You said that a few times, and you've got this list. You don't want to
my
throw it away.
burn list.
Yeah, but it's not burned.
it's not.
It's in a pile somewhere.
So I wonder, as we're talking here, what if I did? What if I did just burn that and say, I don't have to do those things? I've already done the homework. I've already looked at all the options. I've decided these are more important, so I'm going to let go of the rest.
So there's a coach I like to listen to called Brooke Castillo. She has a podcast, The Life Coach School. And she talks about this Monday hour 1 process where she sits down on Monday. She writes her whole to-do list. She fits in the calendar for the week, what fits in the calendar, and she literally crumples up and throws away the rest of the to-do list. Not because, well, just because she's not going to get to it this week, right? Next week, if it shows up again on the to-do list, it might make the calendar, it might not, but she's just throwing it away. She's crumpled up, and if it doesn't show up on the to-do list again, then it wasn't that important in the first place, right?
Interesting.
So an interesting concept you guys could look into kind of goes along this topic of throwing away that to-do list.
You know, I wonder if I did that because a lot of my lists are in my CRM or my tasks, and they're just on my own personal contact. So then they pop up and I don't forget them. But what if I did just like delete everything and just brainstormed from scratch and then throw
Listen
away
to her. She has like a hour-long podcast on it.
So it's Brooke Castillo.
Brooke Castillo.
Okay, thank you.
She's great. Where else do you want to take us in this book, Liz? What else stood out to you? So I wrote a note on page 68 about being guilt-free. He says, I'm talking about deliberately setting aside distraction-free time in a distraction-free space to do absolutely nothing other than think. If I do that, I get all guilty. I'm like, I should be XYZ, right?
You know what? I've read this in multiple business books now about thinking time.
Space.
Yeah.
Right.
So each one of the authors kind of has their own term of this. But there was somewhere I read, and I wish I could remember where because I have no idea, about how C-level executives, CEO, COO, blah, 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 in Japan. I'm just going to make up the details. I don't know, okay?
I think you said a lot about it in this book.
That part of their job is that they are required to do that. Maybe it is in this book, about how they have to spend a couple hours every single day thinking.
He talks about Bill Gates doing that. I don't know if he talks about Japan, though. Yeah. But I think a lot of us feel like, I don't know why I feel so much guilt about it. There's a lot of duty.
Maybe it's because you don't realize how brilliant you are.
In my mind. It's like, there's a waste of time. Nothing gets to come from this.
The guy who wrote The Road Less Stupid, he's so smart. I got to hear him speak.
The Road Less Stupid.
The Road Less Stupid.
Never heard of that.
You should read it. It's amazing. He talks also about thinking time. And he said that your most brilliant ideas come to you. Like, you know everything about your life better than any coach, better than anyone else, because you know all the pieces. So when you give yourself space to sit down and just evaluate, so your thinking times with a pad of paper and a pen, and you just jot down whatever comes to mind, you'll all of a sudden start to recognize the little bottlenecks. You'll recognize the opportunities. You'll recognize the different pieces and things, and
just
be
trust
able
your
to
brain, trust your intelligence and your wisdom.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do it. I got a vacation this week. I'm going to spend some thinking time.
Which leads perfectly into the next point, which he talks about how play is essential. So you're on your vacation. You can both do your thinking time and your play. So a non-essentialist thinks that play is trivial, thinks it's an unproductive waste of time, or an essentialist knows that it's essential and it sparks exploration. It'll help you with your thinking time because you'll be more creative. So
I love it.
When it's time to laugh, like totally laugh. Like laugh the way a child does when you're playing peekaboo with an infant. Have you ever seen a baby like belly laugh?
Yes,
like
I
that?
love it. I get jealous when I see it. I'm like, how come I can't do that?
It takes practice.
Like yeah.
You practice to not being like that.
And I think it's important. He defines play, not just like play, but anything that we do simply for the joy of doing.
Yes.
Rather than as a means to an end.
I told Brad, he was making fun of me one time because I didn't have hobbies. Like he hunts and fishes and four wheels and things like that. And
Brad's
I
your
said,
husband.
Yeah, Brad's my husband. So I told him I want my hobby to be going to the spa. And he's like, that's not a hobby. I'm like, why? It costs a ton of money and benefits no one but me. And I enjoy it.
Sounds like a great hobby.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. That's funny. I have the opposite. I'm more like you. Like hobbies. I really think this is important though, right? Like I read, there's a Free to Focus is a book by Michael Hyatt. He talks a lot about this, about like if you're only reading the nonfiction business books, are you really relaxing? Are you really?
Yeah.
So like on this vacation we're about to go for 4 days, I'm taking a John Grisham book. I'm just going to take, and I never read fiction.
You
right?
don't?
Only when
Dude,
I'm on a
love
vacation
fiction.
and I have to like force myself to do it so that I can try to get a little escape. My tendency is to take these kind of books and want to learn and want to dive in and better myself.
No, I read several books a month, but half of them are mind candy. That's what I call them, because
I call them nonsense books.
Nonsense.
Yeah,
that works too.
Mind candy. Yeah, but I think that's what he's talking about here is just the benefits of it, right? He talks about the stress relief, right? The antidote to stress. He says, I've seen play reverse the effects in his own children of stress. When they're stressed, things feel out of control, I have them draw. When they do, the change is almost immediate. The stress melts away and their ability to explore is regained. You got to do that more.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Beneficial all the way around.
Yeah.
All right. The next thing he goes into is sleep. So sleep is something that I used to kind of think was for the weak, because a lot of books would talk about that, and I would try to live off of less sleep. And I realized after having babies that I don't function well with little sleep. And I have so much
I used to do better
admiration.
at it when I was younger.
Yeah,
right?
better when
Now-
I was younger. But
Now the body doesn't take it so well. Right?
no. And in fact, it's kind of become something that so many more people are aware of, is that you think better, you problem solve better, you're more temperate in your emotions, and all of that when you get sufficient sleep. So he says 8 hours.
Isn't it a miracle? I just always marvel at what your body does when you sleep.
Yeah.
You can go to bed so wasted, and it's like the little blood cells come out and start healing
Yeah.
everything in your body, from your emotions to your mind to your ankles, your knees, and your back. And yeah, just
And I love
powerful.
going to sleep expecting it to work too. Like I just express gratitude. I'm so grateful. I'm going to wake up feeling amazing. And then I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't say it out loud, but I do expect it to work.
Yeah, it's amazing. If I'm like, oh, I'm only going to, whatever. I know I'm going to be so tired tomorrow. It's weird. Like I am.
I like how he calls this protecting the asset, right? The best asset we have is ourselves. If we underinvest in ourselves, and by that I mean our minds, our bodies, our spirits, we damage the very tool we need to make our highest contribution.
Yep. And he talks about how a lot of people who are entrepreneurs are addicted to achievement. And for a type A personality, it's not hard for us to push ourselves really hard. And so just knowing that if you're that type of personality who's going to not protect your asset and push yourself too hard, this is something to be conscious of.
Something else about this that I've had a couple different coaches talk to me about the importance of being healthy, right? Because in order to go to the office and to spend the whole day inspiring my group and leading them and being an example and making those hard sales calls, I gotta be healthy. I gotta have enough sleep. I've gotta have the right food. The one guy's like, I get a B12 shot once a week, right? Just so that I can have the juice I need from 8 to 5 to lead,
Right.
and have that energy.
I
Something
love
I've
it.
been really focused on working hard at is trying to get that level of baseline sleep and nutrition to be able to lead.
Right. And he compares, it's kind of funny, on page 97, he compares to sleep deficit, like drinking too much alcohol. And he says, you would never hear someone say, that person's a great worker, he's drunk all the time. And yet you'll say that about people who are like cutting out all of their sleep.
Yeah, why do we have that mentality in our society?
Because we're high demands on people. And so restructuring what's important can make all the difference. All right. Next section, unless you had any final comments on the sleep.
Let's move on.
All right. So selecting. So now that you're taking care of yourself, you got your whole list. Now, how do you use extreme criteria, as they say, to eliminate things? And so there's somebody, Derek Sivers, I think is how he says it, where he has that TED Talk that says, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah. Yeah. If it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no.
Yeah. No more yes. It's either hell yeah or no. Says a whole bunch of different ways. So the 90% rule in here that he talks about, where a colleague and he went working to select 24 people from a pool of almost 100 applicants to their Design Your Life, essentially. It was a class they were doing, and first they identified a minimum criteria, such as can they attend every class, and then they settled on next ideal attributes is, are they ready for a life-changing experience? And then from that, they rated them on a scale from 1 to 10. And the 9s and 10s, they decided were in. Anyone under 7 was an automatic out. And then they're like, so what do we do with the 7s and 8s? And they decided, if it's not hell yeah, it's no.
Yeah, they're automatically
Throw 'em
out
out.
too.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can apply this to every decision, right? You
Yep.
can evaluate and pick only the most important, the best options for what you're going to do.
Yes.
And he says this way you avoid getting caught up in indecision, or worse, getting stuck with the 60s and 70s, right?
And I swear that's where I spend so much of my life, is because I feel bad. I feel wasteful throwing away some of these ideas that I've had. And so going back to the Cone Marie thing, she says, is it more wasteful to have clothing in your closet that you don't wear and that just sits there neglected? Or Is it more wasteful to give it to a secondhand store where somebody is going to love it and buy it? And perhaps somebody that can't afford to buy it brand new.
Yeah.
And so you're doing service to the clothing to give it a new life and someone else.
So you have to somehow figure out how to apply that to your ideas.
Yes.
Your wasteful ideas. I sometimes have ideas. This is probably a bad sign. If I have an idea that's been rolling around in the back of my head for 20 years and I haven't done it yet, I should probably just kick it out, right? Why am I dragging that thing around, still thinking someday I'm going to do it?
Unless it's something you're going to do. So maybe just pull it out, fully examine it. And if it is something that would give you fulfillment that you'd really, really enjoy, but you've just chosen not to make time for it, maybe put it in your calendar. And if you're not willing to do that, then yeah, throw it away.
Get rid of it.
Okay. I'm really excited. My brain's going to feel so much lighter tomorrow. Go through this whole process. Another thing that they talk about, which really applies to our listener group, is that he talks about a particular company that wanted to make the right decision with hiring. And they began with the basic assumption that they would rather be understaffed than hire the wrong person quickly. And kind of the same thing again, that they wanted to make sure that they had a hell yeah for the applicants instead of just picking one.
You know, one story, I remember I took an entrepreneurship class once, and the first thing the instructor said has stuck with me. He's like, coming up with a good business idea is not the challenge. Everybody has a good business idea. It's deciding which one to pursue, right? You can have a billion good business ideas, but you have to filter them.
Yeah.
You know? And he sent us out to like examine these businesses and come back with ideas, and as a group we would eliminate and get down to one that had, you know, profit margins and lifestyle things and things that we wanted.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's like ideas are a dime a dozen. Everybody has a good idea.
That's what I'm going to start saying when I look at my list. These are a dime a dozen.
Sorry,
I don't need these.
Ideas come cheap.
They do. All right, next section on clarity. Clarify.
Clarify. So eliminate. Still talking about eliminating, right?
Yep. So going from pretty clear to really clear. And so if, like he says, this would matter less if it were not for the fact that clarity of purpose is so consistently predicts how people do their jobs. And working with executive teams, I've been amazed to see what happens when teams are sort of clear about what they're trying to do versus really clear. And you know what? When we had our leadership retreat just last month, and we identified what we wanted our values to be, we spent a couple hours going through everything that was potential, and then going through this whole elimination process, looking up definitions, putting it together, all of that. And one of our significant 7 is clarity of purpose.
Clarity of purpose.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So do you guys have like a clear statement of purpose for your company?
We do.
And does everyone know it?
Yes.
How?
Because we talk about it every team meeting.
So
and in fact,
chief
our
reminding officer tells them about it.
Chief reminding officer. Yeah. So sometimes what we do is we cut up into words, and they're in envelopes, and we put them in teams, and whoever puts it together first gets a gift card.
That's cool.
Last week, what we did is we just said word number 13, and whoever said word number 13 in it got the gift card.
Very
and
cool.
then we'll have them like,
That's
so
brilliant.
our mission is to provide professional value, exceed our clients' goals, and exceed all expectations.
Very nice.
And so we'll have them pick like which of the 3 parts, things like that.
Very cool.
And then our significant 7 are our values.
I love it. That's clarity, right?
That is clarity. All right. An essentially intent is both inspirational and concrete, both meaningful and measurable. Done right, an essential intent is one decision that settles 1,000 later decisions. I would love to make fewer decisions.
So it's interesting because we just finished talking about the E-Myth book, right?
Yep.
And his first action step was to clarify your intent.
Yes.
Right? And
Goes
I love
perfect
how
with this.
they come here and they say this is a decision that makes 1,000 other decisions, right? Because the intent, this is kind of like in Michael Gerber's words, it's like you're deciding what kind of lifestyle you want to live,
Right.
And if you've got clarity around that, the other decisions are easy.
Right.
I think where I get wishy-washy is I just don't have the clarity, or I haven't put my foot down. All right, I haven't put my foot down and said this is important to me. This is how I want to live my life. And if I had, it'd be so easy to not be wishy-washy on different decisions or opportunities or ideas that come. Right?
Yeah. Like the example they give of Johnson & Johnson, who they not only had their values, but they had them written in concrete. And it was like etched in there. And so when the 1980s cyanide Tylenol thing came out and some people were dying, they had to make the decision, do we waste $100 million pulling everything from the shelves?
Recall.
Yeah. And so when they went to their mission statement, the decision that had previously been made that the customers come first, stockholders come second, they said, we pull the product.
Yeah.
And so, and it turned out to be very
story.
good for them.
It worked out for them, didn't it?
Yeah. That's what happens when you do the right thing.
Okay, so this chapter 11 to me is really where I need to make the most progress. It's about saying no.
Gracefully.
Right? Gracefully. And they even talk about how to say no gracefully without actually saying the word no, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, they talk about on page 137, the non-essentialist avoids saying no to avoid feeling social awkwardness and pressure. So says yes to everything. But the essentialist dares to say no firmly, resolutely, and gracefully, says yes only to the things that really matter.
And I love the example where he said, I would so much rather have somebody say no, and I know I can count on the fact that I need to find someone else rather than think I can count on them, and then they just don't show up.
That's a good point.
And so, okay, Nelson, what are some of the ways that you can say no?
Well, there's the graceful, right? There's, he says in here, I'm flattered that you thought of me, but I'm afraid I don't have the bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would very much like to, but I'm overcommitted. I actually read a whole book on this, The Power of a Positive No.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really do me any good because I'm still very
Maybe you need to
overcommitted in my life.
You need to do the 3x5 challenge. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So whenever you're starting a new habit, you get a 3x5 card and you put it in your pocket or your wallet or whatever. And every time that you have the opportunity to do it or not do it, you get to mark down when you've done it.
Oh.
And so you
like
don't
a tally sheet.
Yeah, you don't track your bad. You don't track when you dropped the ball. You just track when you do it, because the reward is you get to pull the paper out and write on it.
Yeah.
And so you get to do that every time that you. So here they talk about focus on the trade-off when you're asked to do something. Remind yourself that everyone's selling something. Make your peace with the fact that saying no often requires trading popularity for respect.
Okay, popularity versus respect, right? It's much better to be
Yeah.
respected than to be liked, right?
There was a story once I heard of a mom. She was at the dinner table and she was complaining to her family about how she got roped into yet another PTA fundraiser thing. And she goes, I hate it. I wish I was just better at saying no. And her daughter goes, you're really good at saying no. You say it to me all the time. She's like, oh, I guess I do.
See, I don't even say it to my kids often enough. My poor wife has to be the no.
She's the bad guy.
So there's a list on page 140 of different no's you can use in your repertoire, right?
Yep.
The awkward pause, the soft no, or the no but. Let me check my calendar and get back to you. That sounds like a total wuss way to do it. Use an email bounce back. Actually love that one. Right? He even talked about when he wanted to write this book, he put his email auto reply to say, I'm in hibernation mode working on a book.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. That's an easy way, right?
Yep.
Say yes. What should I deprioritize?
That's what you say when your manager's the one asking you to do more stuff.
I'd be happy to. What would you like me to take off my list?
One that I use a lot is I will point them in the direction of somebody who can help them. And I'll just own the fact that I'm not the best person to help them. Perhaps I know how to do it. Perhaps I'm skilled enough to do it. But because of what I have on my plate, I'm not the best person to help them. So I'll say, you know what? Actually, I think so-and-so would be fantastic at that.
Yep.
I also love to, can't now. And I think so-and-so would be fantastic at that.
Love to, can't now. That's awesome. Okay, how about uncommitting? What about stuff that you're already committed to and you want out?
This one is huge. And so part of it is just going through and deciding what it is that you have added to your plate that maybe shouldn't be there. And the note I have on here, which doesn't, I just opened my book to a random page, but it kind of does fit here. It says more effort doesn't always yield more results. Less is better. And so more effort to get everything done on your plate doesn't necessarily get you more results. Like as you uncommit to the things that don't cut the mustard, they don't add to the life that you want to have and instead just pull from you. That's when it's so critical.
Well, and I think along with that is the idea of the sunk costs, right?
Yes.
You got,
oh,
you
man.
got so much invested in this, like to turn back now would be
Wasteful.
irresponsible, right?
Yep.
I've got a few projects like that around the office that I'm just thinking, I think we should just kill them. They're not part of the 20%, right? We're putting energy and money and effort into them. And yeah, if we kill them, then we've wasted some time and money, but I don't want to waste more time and money on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunk costs, cutting your costs. Sometimes that's what needs to happen.
So the non-essentialist would ask, why stop now when I've already invested so much in this project?
Yep.
The essentialist would say, if I weren't already invested in this project, how much would I invest in it now? That's a great question.
Brilliant question.
Yeah. All right, what else? Beware of the status quo. Just because it's the way we do it doesn't mean we should always do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I marked on page 197 where it talks about small wins. This made me think of a picture my wife has hung up in our house.
Yes.
It's like, understand, it's got a picture of a guy standing under a ladder and the first rung is out of his reach.
Yep.
And then the other guy has little tiny rungs and he's going up. It's just a visual that reminds me, like, you know, we
Small
can
wins
create
are so
small
powerful.
wins, right?
You know, I love the other point that he talks about how the Latin root of the word decision is CIS or CID, which literally means to cut or to kill. And so that's just part of just getting rid of the pieces.
That's what this is all about, right? It's cutting.
Cutting. And so then it makes it possible to do those small wins, those small steps that get you to the next level.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of power in small things done consistently, right? Just
Yep.
the analogy that I like to use is flood irrigation versus drip irrigation.
Yeah.
You see the trees or the plants or the vegetables that grow when they have a little bit of steady water and compare them to one that gets flooded once a week. And the difference is huge. The growth is much stronger with a little bit of steady progress.
Yes.
That's something I've been trying to focus on a lot.
And, you know, the other thing, too, is that sometimes in real estate, especially those on the commercial side, is they always go for the big win. But it can have a big payout when you get it, but you can have tons and tons of lost effort if it doesn't work out.
It's funny that you bring that up because I have turned down a lot of people who've called me and asked if I do commercial loans, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always like, well, I could, and there's a lot of money in that, but I've never done one, so what do I say to this guy? Do I say, if you're willing to be my guinea pig, great? And usually what I say is, no, I don't do commercial. I don't think it doesn't fit in our wheelhouse, right?
Right.
Tempting, but we've never done it.
All right. Okay, my last couple that I have in here is the genius of routine. Chapter 18 is the flow. Sorry, did I skip past it?
Well, what page is it? Let me get there.
203.
I haven't read this part, I have to confess. But
Well, then I'm excited
I
for you
want
to
to read
read
this
it.
part because this is what I need.
I'm sure that you already have read other books or had experience with this already. So the genius of routine, I'm just going to read this first opening thing because I love it. For years before the Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps won the gold at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, he followed the same routine at every race. He arrived 2 hours early. He stretched and loosened up according to a precise pattern: 800 mixer, 50 freestyle, 600 kicking with kickboard, 400 pulling a buoy, and more. After the warm-up, he would dry off, put on his earphones, and sit, never lie down on the massage table. From that moment, he and his coach, Bob Bowman, wouldn't speak a word to each other until after the race was over. And just having these routines, like the way that you start your workday, the way that you start your morning, the way that you start a project, sometimes switching tasks, like at the end of a time block, starting your next time block, having a routine where you just say, I'm done, closing those windows in my computer, sitting here. Like I even know people that'll sit at a different desk for different parts of their job just because it helps them shut off and start new.
Yeah. And he turned out pretty good. He did all right.
Yeah, he got
Phelps.
a couple gold medals, I think, like 3.
So it says the non-essentialist tries to execute the essentials by force. The essentialist designs a routine that enshrines what is essential, making execution almost effortless.
Yep.
These are the systems we were talking about at the beginning, right? Just
Yeah, and I think it's so critical to really pay attention that a non-essentialist tries to execute the essentials by force. There are so many people that the way that they approach things is discipline at a level that's almost bullying themselves. They force it.
It's not sustainable.
It's not, and it's demoralizing. It almost causes people to have a self-esteem issue, which usually shows up as being pretty cruel and harsh with other people. You know, a lot of times people who are like that have a low self-esteem. That's why they show up that way. And so when we figure out our own design, that just makes it almost effortless. Then we see the results. We feel the peace. We feel empowered. It's totally different.
I'm going to have to resist the temptation to take this book with me on my vacation and keep reading. I've got to read nonfiction, nonsense books.
You mean fiction?
I mean fiction. Fiction.
All right, next section is focus. What's important now? Right, you want to read that quote?
Yeah, this is actually interesting because there's well, I'll tell you in a minute. So
Okay.
life is available only in the present moment. If you abandon the present moment, you cannot live the moments of your daily life deeply. Don't ask me to say the name of the person who said that. Thich Nhat Hanh.
I think it's perfect.
Sounds like a smart person.
It probably is. All right, so focusing
On the now.
focusing on the now, focusing on what's present. It's so easy to get wrapped up in thinking of, you know, everything that already happened and how you're going to deal with it, and then problem solving for the future, other things you got to do. But when you can have your essential list, then focusing on the present is, I don't know, it just feels amazing.
Mind is focused on the present, tunes into what's important right now, enjoys the moment. That's the essentialist.
That's how you're going to belly laugh.
Yeah, instead of the non-essentialist whose mind is spinning out about the past or the future, who thinks about what's important yesterday or tomorrow and worries about the future or stresses about the past. And I can see the contrast there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's huge. And I love the multitasking, multi-focusing. So he tells this story of how he runs into a former classmate on campus and they start talking, and after only like 20, 30 seconds, the guy gets a text. And so what's this guy's? Greg is standing there waiting for the guy to finish sending the text messages. And it goes on for a while, and finally he's like, I'm just going to see how long this takes. Over 2 minutes. Can you imagine how awkward it is just
there texting?
staring at him?
Wow.
And then he goes, I gave up and walked back to my desk and went back to work. After another 5 minutes, he became present again, interrupting me for the second time. Now he wanted to resume the conversation. It's like, no, thank you.
Wow.
So, and lots of us do allow ourselves to get sucked into different things that pull us away from what we're doing in the moment, whether it's a conversation with a person, that's pretty extreme, or if we're working on a project or a task or whatnot, we allow interruptions to totally pull our attention.
He says the true essentialist never attempts to do more than one thing at a time.
Yep.
In fact, we can easily do two things at the same time: wash the dishes and listen to the radio, eat and talk, clear the clutter from our desk while thinking about where to go for lunch. We can't do is concentrate on two things at the same time.
Right. Have you ever noticed when you're trying to find an address, you turn down the radio?
Yeah.
Because right then you need to super problem solve and concentrate.
Yeah, or just like pull over at some point. You're like, I'm just driving the wrong direction anyway.
Might as well just
get the right address in my phone before I start going any further.
Yep. So multitasking versus multi-focusing. Get the future out of your head. That was one that I really marked up because that's one of the areas I really struggle. I'll start to think about everything that needs to happen, everything I'm working on, all of that. And so when I can just tell myself, you know what, it's good, let it go, focus for the now, it makes me so much more productive.
Hey, I just found who Thich Nhat Hanh is. He's a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk who has been called the world's calmest man. Very cool. Looking forward to reading some of his thoughts.
That is
about
awesome.
mindfulness. Mindfulness is all about living in the now, right?
Yeah.
Being aware of the present. Well, good. Well, what else, Liz? What else do you want to point out from the book? We don't have to necessarily go through everything.
I guess we don't.
I think it's just a really important conversation about, living your priorities and eliminating what's not important to you, or, trying to balance life. I struggle sometimes because I do think you can't just be 100% selfish, right? You can't just be like care about nothing else or no one else but you and what matters to you. So how do you balance that?
Well, Ayn Rand wrote a book. Do you know who Ayn Rand is?
Yeah, Fountainhead.
She's amazing. Yeah.
Atlas Shrugged.
One of her books is The Virtue of Selfishness.
Huh?
And she actually talks about how altruism is evil, which I thought that was kind of interesting. But when you're altruistic, that it's at your own personal detriment. And if you show up as an anemic version of yourself, how much benefit really are you to everyone else around you? That you've got to take care of yourself. You got to put the oxygen on first. And when everybody shows up, the other thing too is if I'm always trying to appease everybody else, then they're trying to appease me, and then you're always like trying to read their mind and find out really what they want. Whereas if everybody just said, this is what I would like, and they say, well, that's what I'd like, and then you can come to a conclusion or a compromise knowing where the other person is coming from rather than guessing, that's where respect and honesty and everything comes from. And so I think that it really just boils down to the fact of, what do you really want in life? Like for me, one of my highest priorities, my core values is great relationships with the people who are important to me. So in me being selfish, if my selfishness is towards that goal, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. So
Ayn Rand, she's got some pretty extreme thoughts.
Oh, she does. But everybody does.
Yeah. Well, at least she wasn't afraid to say them, right?
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you for recommending this to me. I have enjoyed it so far. Definitely something I need to read over and over again, because I do think that this is probably a big missing piece in my life, just being able to design my own life, my own script, and not let other people dictate what happens and what's important. So.
Yep. I'm excited to implement more. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface.
Awesome.
So.
Okay, well, Thank you, Liz. And thank you all for listening. Look forward to the next episode of Business Greater Than You.
All right. Take care.
You've been listening to the Business Greater Than You podcast with Nelson Bars and Liz Sears. Our mission is to help lenders and agents like you.
If you're either already a full-time realtor or looking to become one, and you desire to be highly successful, if you are both a learner and a doer, a hard worker and a total team player, we would love to chat with you about joining our team. Visit us at businessgreaterthanyou.com.
If you're a loan officer or would like to be one, we have a path to help you learn the business and develop the skills needed to lead a high-performance origination team for better income and lifestyle.
And lastly, if you would like to work with either of us, we would love your business.
Do you have a question for a future show? Would you like to be considered as a guest on our show? If so, please call or text our listener line at 801-871-9130.